Hey, welcome to Diaries. It's Craig. Today is Sunday. There's absolutely nothing significant about that. but there is something significant about the number 33. So, a weird thing happened yesterday. Well, actually, for the last year or so, I mean, my whole life I've seen certain numbers that reappear, and I think I've mentioned this quite a few times 702, like since I was living in Johannesburg, age 11 or something like that, 12. 702, I wake up 702, come home at night time, look at the clock 702. But the number 33 shows up all the time, and it just reminds me about an old, not an old, fairly old movie by Jim Carrey called The Number 23. And more recently, within the last 2 years, since I was watching Chalk Body Outline and also another channel called Quantum of Conscience, who talk about the 33 quite often. There's another channel that I watch that's the guy or woman, I'm not really sure if it's a guy or a woman who runs that channel. It's called Out the 33, I think it's called, or something like that. Anyway, but they're anyway. I just wanted to mention that. So I was talking to my ex-wife yesterday, and it was just weird. Like I was talking about rabbit holes. I was just saying, no, don't get too deep into it, and because at the end of the day, we can't do anything about it. Something that someone else, um, who has started to annoy me on social media, called Gypsy Jane. Another mosquito. It's like 5 degrees outside. Bastard. Let me get this fucker. No, it doesn't matter. I'll probably get bitten while we talk. But anyway, so this Gypsy Jane person, woman in America, was talking about, what do we do with all this knowledge when we get it? What do we do with all these rabbit holes? This is kind of, I'm glad it's a point that's been raised by Matt of Quantum of Conscience quite a few times. Is yes, indeed, what do we do? If we learn a lot of the truth about this world, like, what does it really do for us? Because short of being a martyr and giving your life up for who, you're going to really give your life up for a bunch of people who are not even woken up. They're just as bad as, I mean, the only difference between the sheep that follow the evil, um, is the fact that they haven't been given anything yet to turn. I mean, if you tempted them with offerings of infinite wealth or whatever it might be, maybe they'd be just as bad as the George Soroses of the world. Um, so why would you give up your life for those sort of people? And it brings me to the point: what do you do with all this information? And as Matt was saying in his channel, um, you know, there's a certain point where you get to all this information, all these rabbit holes, and it just becomes pointless. It's just more fodder. It's more, as he calls it, pissed on breadcrumbs, things to make you follow. To just, well, one of the theories that he had was to basically create negative emotion for the creatures, whatever they may be, or that could be aliens, it could be other human beings, it could be. There's all sorts of theories here with you look back into not just the Sumerians but way before them, so way before the 12,000 to 15,000 years ago, even towards 50,000 years ago. One of my brother's friends was talking about the strange occurrence that you get this massive bubble of technology that seems to happen in certain places in the world, around the Incas, around Angkor Wat in Cambodia, the Egyptians. It's not at the same time. It all happens at different times. What if that's the same people passing the torch to, the next evil empire? Is the only time that's kind of, that I can see throughout history, that's been kind of delayed or split, has been when the evil English empire handed off the baton, and that includes the Scots, by the way. That includes us, because if you look at the possibly the first people to go to America after the Native Americans, could have been the Freemasons, the stonemasons, and these people spawned from Scotland as well. So it's part of my point that evil comes from everywhere, and that the tribes that we're looking for should transcend color and family, and move into, you effectively choose your tribe based upon um, what you're like as a person. And I suppose the movies, There's movies that came around about the same time as the Hunger Games, and I can't remember what they're called. I think it's called Divergence or something like that, or Divergence or something like that. I'm pretty sure that's what they're called. And this was a theory that they had four camps based upon what your mind type was like. So I suppose that is kind of, sometimes, do your thoughts come from movies you watch, or do they just happen to coincide with movies that happened? And but anyway, regardless, that movie, that's what it was effectively doing. You get tested at a certain age to see what camp you belong to, and and I suppose the same as with Harry Potter, whether you're Slytherin or this or that. You know what I mean? Very, very similar ideologies. Are we being seeded with these thoughts on purpose? That's another point there. Again, no point going down rabbit holes. It's not going to get me. It's not going to fix the problems in the world. So, as I was talking about to Victoria yesterday or the day before about the whole rabbit hole thing. Not to say that you shouldn't still have a quest for truth, but the reality is, it's just get the balance right, because even if you red pill yourself and go a little bit too far, and every day all you're doing is consuming the truth, the reality is, unless you are a billionaire, there's very little you can do about it. Even if you're a millionaire, it's a piss in the ocean what you can do about it, right? Although, if you're a millionaire, you could focus on waking others up, For what purpose, I don't know, but it seems that there's some good reason. So, for example, if you have enough truth, let's say you have two of me in a parallel universe to each other, and they both become red-pilled, right? In other words, you understand that there are things that, when you plug into the system, all you're really doing is feeding someone else, whether it be your thoughts and innovation, whether it be the energy that you expel through plowing a field or whatever it might be. You're generally feeding someone else and their ability to do nothing except for become complacent, or what's the word? Basically eventually debaucherous, because they're doing nothing with their time. And then, as they say, idle hands, the devil's playground, that kind of thing. You can interpret any way you want, if you're whether you're religious or not religious. I'm not religious, but I mean, I still listen to these things, because if things that were said in the past are wise, it doesn't really matter what they're applied to. You know what I mean? They're still wise. So when you go down these rabbit holes, the point I was making, and that Matt has made on his channel, is that it doesn't really get you anywhere, just constantly going down these rabbit holes. One, it makes you look crazy, because every time you speak to think, oh, he's just one of those conspiracy theorists, and they don't realize that they're just one of those people who never believe anything except for if the system feeds it to them. They ask no questions of the system ever, but they ask questions of everything else that challenges the system. They don't realize they're a system slave, right? So you, in some ways, to the other side, you look as bad as they look to you. You know what I mean? So and you might say, well, who cares what they think? But it's not just that. It's about the energy that you're expelling and what you're getting out of it. If you're spending all this time finding out truth and truth and truth, like, for example, years ago, I told people, stop sending me stuff of animals being tortured. I know this stuff's happening. I can't change it. But I have punched quite a few people in this world now for when I've seen them kick animals, or even in a car. In New Zealand years ago, a guy tried to hit a fucking cat and punched him. If you're being an evil piece of shit, here's another way to look at it. If you're a sort of person who will not punch someone in that circumstance, what the hell do you think you're going to do armed with all this knowledge? And the way that I saw it years ago is that when you see these sort of things, like someone skinning an animal alive in China and all this sort of stuff, being really horrible, or cutting up an octopus when it's alive and it can see itself, and they put it back in the tank again in Japan. Okay, that's the one thing I haven't done anything about, because I know that the system in Japan would screw me up for that, because their legal systems are really horrible over there, and I have spent a lot of time in Japan. So you got to pick your battles, of course. Again, that's being the martyr. What good's it going to do? It's not going to make the Japanese change their way. They're not going to stop eating octopus tomorrow, because I got myself jailed because I went off at some guy in a restaurant for cutting up a live octopus and putting it back in the tank after half of his legs are gone. You know what I mean? But there's certain things that are evil that you pretty much have to bite your tongue with. to live to fight another day, you know. And this is kind of the same thing, as I say, with Matt's channel, he was on about, was that these things probably occur, like the sharing of these things, for example, on social media, are probably meant to make you have despair, negative emotion that can be fed upon. So once you learn something, once I learn that there is extreme evil in this world that's torturing animals all the time and torturing children, I don't need to see it constantly. I know it's happening. If in the position that I can wake people up to create a critical mass, or in a position that I can actually stop something from occurring, now I'll do that, right? If it's within my power to do so, that I can live to fight another day. You know, that's it. Live to fight another day. If it's something that's going to extinguish my life through making a protest, that's where you know, the cover of the album by Rage Against the Machine, you know, that shows the Buddhist doing self-immolification, I think it's called, where you burn yourself alive. Now, what did that really give us except for a history that's a photograph that's gone down in history? Did it really change anything? His life, it probably provoked a lot of thought. So that's probably a better example than most, but in the grand scheme of things, it still did nothing. You know, horrible to say that when someone's really given their life, but I mean, let's face it. You know, it's probably done in the grand scheme of things. It's probably changed absolutely zero, because even the people who it kind of shook seeing that photograph, did any of them change the world? The answer is most likely no, right? And I know that this is really sounding like I'm becoming black-pilled now, like apathetic towards any potential change that we could you know, we could be a catalyst towards. And it's not really. I'm just really pointing out something that's quite obvious. Well, maybe it's not obvious. The thing I'm pointing out is that the more important thing to be doing, and this isn't really mentioned exactly on Matt's channel, but I think the more important thing to be doing is making sure you have a good life and making sure that you are good, making sure that you remain as a human being, all your atoms and you as a whole, you as a kind of entity, remain positively charged. So that because everything, let's say you can have a haunted house that's negatively charged, right? All the things inside that house are charged negatively. Overall, our universe being energy, we need to pick a side, and maybe that side is just positive versus negative. You know, good versus evil, positive versus negative. And when in a position to do something, you know, you can be like a super positive. You know what I mean? You can as me and another friend were talking about energy types, the positive, whether you're positive or negative, the energy vampire, the energy amplifier, the energy deflector or reflector, and the other one, which was amplifier, deflector, creator. Yeah, so you're someone who's like a positive energy bomb. You're someone who's like a positive energy parasite or a negative energy parasite. And this is getting back to Matt's channel, which and all not just his channel as well, also the old movie that I only saw recently for the first time called They Live. If you haven't seen it, look it up. It's 1980 something. Might even be 70s. I'm pretty sure it's 1980s, and it shows basically that there's people walking among us that are different, but you can't see them until you wear these certain pair of glasses. Feeds into quite a few theories that people have had about the fact that we are all effectively harvest for something. It could be meat, it could be blood, it could be energy, all sorts of things, right? So that was one thing I wanted to start with today, was just to say that you know, there are endless rabbit holes. You can go down, you can spend your life going down them and not even digest 0.01% of them. So there's actually, you get to the stage where if you've learned the lesson, what's the point in feeding you more again? It's like going to university for 50 years to learn to be a carpenter. You know, if you can already learn it in 2 to 3 years to learn everything there is to know about carpentry, what's the point in sitting for 50 years learning about it? And that's the point I'm making here. overconsumption of information, overconsumption of enlightened information, to get you to a certain point of awareness, um, is pointless. So maybe the only things you need to look at are things that are unique, that make an effect on you fundamentally as a person, or make an effect on you as far as those energy types. If you're a reflector, if you're someone who is more, let's say you're 60% of your character or personality is an energy vampire, and you're a negative energy vampire, you can maybe absorb negative energy and use it and still turn that around and make it for good. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that things are over just because you're a certain type. If you're an energy creator, you can maybe be, if you were someone who is creating negative energy your whole life, maybe you can be converted to producing positive energy, if that's 70% of what you're about, and then maybe 30% you're a vampire. I don't know, whatever it is. There's definitely mixtures of the two. So yeah, the other thing I was going to say is that the thing I was getting at is you can't consume everything. So it gets to the stage where I just smack myself in the balls trying to kill a fucking mosquito. You can't tennis racket. Because you can't consume everything. Intellectually consume everything. Then, the key might be just having a balance of living a worthwhile life. Even that might not be important. Just giving yourself a good life. You owe yourself a good life, right? So you can choose to be miserable, like those old Christians years ago, with self-flagellation, whacking themselves in the back and stuff like that, or the old Protestants who believed they would put pebbles in their shoes so they would have constant suffering because Jesus had suffering as well. You can decide that's what your life's about. You can decide to make your life good, and then also pass that feeling on to others. To effectively infect others with your positivity, the same way that negative people affect people with their negativity. Right? Undo the shit that's been happening for years. But yeah, so part of that, I think, is to recognize when you're being schooled in a certain way, or even just to recognize your past self as being a certain way. So I definitely reckon that compared to this girl I'm seeing at the moment, that I was probably, even though I was kind of I wouldn't say red pilled, I would say purple pilled quite early. I didn't become let's say properly red pilled until the last 10 years. Probably not even all of that, because there was certain things I was still a proper system slave for, or following around women, like not even, because some of this MGTOW stuff does tie into the red pill world. And I would say that I was still a little bit too obsessive over women until a few years ago. So because now I just literally don't give a fuck. It's just like, well, if someone likes you, they like you. If they don't, they don't. I wouldn't be chasing anyone around at this stage of my life, and for the last few years. Yeah, it's about. Yeah, that's what I was going to get to. About when people are to recognize that the blue pilled past person you were and how you got out of that. How would you school someone else if they were really asking you how to let's say they're taking their first red pills and waking up to certain things in life. One thing I think that might help people move forward out of the main blue pill thing in this world, that I believe, in the Western world anyway, which is the belief that our political systems are real, right? And that the left and right is actually a thing. Instead of a thought that you have, a right-wing thought, a left-wing thought, instead of that, an actual indoctrinated camp that you're part of, and every thought that you have must align with the camp that you swore your allegiance to. Like, I will be blue from now on, and everything I do will be whatever. I'll be the red camp, I'll be the blue camp, I'll be a left-winger, whatever the hell it is, right? And they just don't realize the whole thing's fake. Well, here's the thing I thought of, right? A lot of the reason that I woke up was, one was when I got rid of a TV and just looking at stuff on the internet. The other one was actually independent media, because it's people who are. Some people are red pill, some people aren't. Like Jimmy Dore, I wouldn't say that he's a fully red pill dude, but him and a few other people in the independent media who don't rely on the CNNs of the world, they will tell the truth about what's going on, regardless of what side it's about. They will give shit to Trump. They'll give shit to Obama. They'll, at the same time. I'm going to make a link actually to his most recent one, which is Jimmy Dore, which was really, really good. He was talking about the fact that because he doesn't need a job from these motherfuckers, he can say whatever he likes, and it pisses them off because he can say whatever he likes. It pisses his other competitors off, other comedians out there, because they can't say what they like because they've got a contract with whoever it might be, Fox or whoever, right? So what I was going to say was the best thing to do for a blue-pilled or purple-pilled person is if you find yourself still being right-winged or left-winged, watch the opposite media. Don't even watch your own media because you're already there. There's no point feeding the beast already. Just to prove to yourself that right wing is truly righteous or left wing is truly righteous. All you need to do is watch the opposite news, and see if you watch the opposite news over and over and watch their narrative. See if it makes you start to become that side. And if you do switch sides, instantly stop watching that news and watch the other side. And then maybe to wake yourself up a bit, just watch the independent stuff that talks about everything. If something's news, they'll talk about it rather than talking about it because it fits a narrative. You know what I mean? And there's not many of those out there. If you live in America, there's probably only a handful I can think of. And actually some of them that were like a Ring of Fire and One American News for the right-wingers, I'm not even sure that's so what's it called, unbiased anymore, as they kind of somewhat were a while ago. I definitely know that the Crystal Ball I've mentioned a few times in The Rising, it's on The Hill, which is an extremely biased channel, but they're not biased. Saga and Crystal Ball, they're not biased. They're straight up telling stuff about both sides. Jimmy Dore, same thing. Lee Camp, unfortunately, he became a little bit too much on the lefty side, but he still does drop a lot of truths against the left, which is really good. But it just goes a little bit onto the Trump bashing side, which is not going to, you're not learning anything new, So yeah, that's the one piece of advice I'd give as far as waking people up to look at various different news. Is never watch the news that you feel that you're associated to by what wing you're on. You know what I mean? And then eventually it'll just wake you up to the fact that it's all complete bullshit unless I'm actually watching something that's showing me everything that's going on. Then you get to the stage of learning that even those channels that you respect, they're still only showing you a minuscule portion of what's going on based upon what's relevant, apparently relevant to you. And the simple fact is, there's a lot more relevant than what the mainstream storylines will tell us was relevant. Like, for example, Jimmy Dore did mention this morning about some of the things that Barack Obama had done in his time. They relate to countries that people don't give a shit about who voted for him. But they also relate to things that people don't give a shit about who voted against him. People didn't, I haven't really ever seen these right-wing channels harp on about, I saw Democracy Now! Years ago before they became bought and sold. I saw them talking about what was happening in Honduras, for example. They don't talk about it anymore. They're on Hillary's side now. They're on the DNC side. They're fucking whatever it is, Biden and all the pedophile network and all the Democrat side. But they used to talk about this sort of stuff. Berta Cáceres, who got murdered years ago, now they've exhumed her body, I hear, recently, which is quite interesting. Anyway, she got murdered a few years back. She implicated Hillary Clinton just 2 weeks before she got assassinated. The things that the Barack Obama did, because you got Michelle Obama talking about how, the things that Trump, we could never get away with that sort of stuff in our time in the White House. And he rightfully lists a few, not all, he lists a few of the things that they've done much worse than Trump. The things that her husband did while in power, much worse than Trump. It's just they weren't advertised in the same way. Of course, he just belongs, like Jimmy says, he belongs in a noose hanging from the rafters, just like George Bush, just like Dick Cheney, and everyone else on the left and right. So yeah, I like that balance that he gives. And that is the only way I can see. That's the easiest way I can see to unprogram people who still watch mainstream media, because you can still unprogram yourself using a mixture of Al Jazeera, RT.com, CNN, Fox, BBC. You can still do it. Press TV in Iran. You just got to take the different sides of the propaganda media from the different countries, right? And it will you see 5 stories across left and right wing countries, countries that are enemies from each other, and you might know that's true. If you see certain stories, but you'll see, oh, it's the same story and it's told from this angle and that angle. Like I learned history from the German side and from the English speaking side, or the Allied side, sorry. Because in South Africa they kind of teach it from the German side, and it was quite interesting learning, even going back even further until the Great Trek in South Africa, Jan van Riebeck's time, and when the Christopher Columbus and Captain Cook was around. Those days, it's amazing the different take on history that those different camps have. So. And also how we kind of forget nowadays that the Dutch were actually quite aligned with the Nazis, whereas nowadays they're very, very lefty liberal, Mind you, so are the Germans. Anyway, that's about that. 2 things I wanted to cover there. No matter how much media you consume, you're never going to learn all there is to know. So I think I've touched on this once before. It gets to a certain point, there's no point chasing knowledge. And I know that sounds like a book burning kind of person now. I'm sort of someone who's I'm not saying that knowledge isn't important. I'm just saying that when you've woken up to a point, there's no point feeding yourself more of the same. Because what you're actually doing, and I noticed this as well on YouTube channels, when you get into watching fear porn stuff, like let's say for example you get into watching apocalyptic things like Epic Economist, for example. The guy is all happy all the time, telling you about the collapse of the US economy or whatever other economy it is, the English economy. And he's got a big happy voice, and this will happen. He sounds extremely happy. All these things are going to go fucked up for the average person, because it ain't going to affect the elite. And then you start to watch these things, and you start watching them more and more and more. To a degree, I would probably even say that Kaiser Report falls into that bracket, even though I really like that show. If you do watch the Kaiser Report, by the way, you've got to see there's a new one on their channel called, their channel's called the Max Kaiser channel on YouTube instead of on RT.com. And they've got a new show called Microdosing Orange Pill. It's really good, worth the watch. They tell a bit about their lives, which I think is important because the 2 of them have obviously got a lot of stories to tell and a lot of knowledge to give. So rather than it being in that kind of context of it being Bitcoin and the financial world, it's they talk a lot about their own lives. I mean, Max Kaiser the other day was talking about the fact that he was dancing on the stage in a lesbian club. People are asking why a lesbian club? It's because they surely they wouldn't want to see that. They want to see other women. But he was kind of explaining why. I won't get into that too much. Yeah, that's it. I haven't got anything else to talk about today. All right, bye.